February, the shortest month of the year, and yet my busiest. We had a bout of flu, prepping for vacation, my birthday, and then just trying to get back to day-to-day life.
And yet, when life gets busy, that's when my brain wants more stories, more escape. And that's how this month I read 8 books and all of these movies and TV shows. Let's get started with this wrap up. First, I have to talk about this crepe cake. It's delicious. If you saw, my mom already stole a bite of it, and she's totally allowed because she bought it for me. But it's so good. It's mango crepe cake. The first book I read this month is The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden. This is a historical fantasy based in medieval Russia. We have the story of Vasya and her family. Her dad is like a nobleman, I believe they call it a boyar, and he and his whole family lives in the northern forests of Russia. They are pretty much further away from Moscow and the main bustling city that's happening, and so for most of half of the book we're just following Vasya and her family and kind of how it's just building this world for us to understand the world that the characters are living in. And we also follow Vasya as she gets older, and she has a special gift where she can see all of these spirits. Unfortunately, in the very beginning of the book, you find out that her mom dies giving birth to Vasya, and her mom knows that there's something special about her. And because of this, her father has always tried to treat her well, but also there's just a big dichotomy of men and women in this world. It's, even though it's a fantasy, it's very much based on real history, and I believe it's also based on real Russian folklore. And so we watch his father remarry a very Christian woman, and because of that brings in a new priest. And so we're reading about the rise of Christianity and how the people who used to also give sacrifices, give, they will feed leave little things for these spirits, but now they're no longer doing it because they fear God. And we're watching that clash. The book is very atmospheric. It's very well written, and you really have to get, for lack of a better term, get through the beginning, where it's really just explaining the world and what's happening and putting you in the shoes of these family members before it really ramps up the pace. I feel like the last half of the book gets really creepy, and it gets really action-packed because there's a lot of stuff happening. And overall, I really enjoyed this book, and I'm really excited to read the next couple books as well. There's 2 more in this trilogy. I really love Vasya and her character. I love how she's not really pretty, but what is wonderful about her and alarming and attractive about her is her fierceness and her just grit and her ability to fight for what she believes is good and true. And so that was that book. I would say that I would recommend it to those who like a lot of world building, very it's very simple writing, but it's beautiful. It's just so good. And it really is great for a winter read. It will make you feel so cold. And also, it does get a little scary if you find yourself to be a pretty I don't like anything horror really, and this month I dabbled into 2 books that are pretty creepy, so I'm very proud of myself. But yeah, I thought that one was a little creepy, but it was cool. It was cool. I was reading it in the middle of the night one night and I had to stop. The next book I read was A Winter's Promise by Christelle Davos. This is a French translated YA fantasy book, and it is a quartet, so there's 4 books in the series. The initial grab for me was the cover. It reminded me a lot of Castle in the Sky, which is a Studio Ghibli movie that is about a castle in the sky. And that's what gravitated me towards the story. I also wanted to try it because it said it was about like a very magical political intrigue type world. In this book, we follow Ophelia, who is a reader, and when I do this, it's because of her powers. She has the power to touch an object, and she can read its history. She can discern what happened around this object when people are holding this object, and along with that, she's also a they call it something specific, a mirror traveler. She can walk from one mirror into like a mirror in a different room. And so her magic is really cool. She comes from a family of readers, and they wear gloves so that they don't accidentally touch anything and read its history. They also try to ask permission before they touch anything, just so that then they don't like find out something that other people don't want them to. This book is about her getting in an arranged marriage with someone named Thorn. The name is very fitting. He's got a very like prickly, icy personality. He doesn't really talk. It's actually one of my pet peeves of this book is this guy doesn't talk. He's just like, you need to be careful, but then he doesn't explain why. And Ophelia and her family don't know much about this country that they're going to, or where the Thorn is from. It's called the Arc of the Pole, and it's known to be like kind of like barbaric, and nobody really has any history of why. And so they end up having to go there. Her and her aunt, who is also her godmother, ends up there, and there's a lot of different magic there. There's a lot of political things going on, and you're finding out as Ophelia finds out. And then there's a cliffhanger. I found this book to be okay. I think that there's a lot going on, and you learn as you go. For the most part, I liked the characters, but I didn't love any of them. I didn't really feel for any of them. Even as Ophelia is making friends, she's constantly thinking like, what if they are not good people, and you just don't know where you stand in this world. So it's very like strange. There's a lot of secrets. There's a lot going on, and I think it's hard for me to thoroughly enjoy this book. Maybe the translation isn't great, but there's just stuff about this book that I found it to kind of drag. I actually stopped reading this book and started reading The Bear and the Nightingale and finished that before I picked this one back up, because there's just not a lot of like emotional connection for me with any of these characters, even though I thought the magic systems are really cool and you're learning about them as you go, and I like that, but it was just strange. I think it's just like odd. It really doesn't grab my attention for some reason. And if you saw previously, you would see that I actually went on a vacation with my husband for our 10-year wedding anniversary / our honeymoon, because we never got to go. And I picked out a couple books and downloaded them from the library onto my Kindle so that I would have stuff to read, especially while traveling. And the first book I read while we were traveling is The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse by Charlie Mackesy. First of all, this book was so short that I finished it before we even boarded the plane. I don't know much about this book. I just remembered hearing Alan from Library of Alexandria talking about it, and I thought that the illustration style was really cool, and so I downloaded it onto my Kindle, and it is such a heartwarming book. It is such a beautiful book. Really is about a boy on a journey, and he meets the mole, the fox, and a horse, and they become friends, and it's full of so much wisdom. I think everyone should read that book. It was a beautiful book. What the River Knows by Isabel Ibanez. Again, on vacation, I read this whole book. It was a lot of fun. It's a YA historical fantasy. We are in the 1800s, and we are following Inez from Buenos Aires to Egypt, where she's looking for the reason why her parents disappeared. She doesn't quite believe it. Her parents loved Egypt. Her parents were very careful. She gets a letter saying that they are presumed dead, and so she sneaks away onto a ship and goes to Egypt and tries to find some answers. I talk about the book in my reading vlog, so I will link that for you to watch if you want, but it's a pretty good book. Like, I am excited for the second book. I want to see what happens. It does also leave on a cliffhanger, but I guess that is one way to get people to keep reading. I figured out what it was about the book that keeps me from giving it 5 stars. So here's the thing. It has a lot of flaws, and I think what made me not love this book is that it tries too hard. It is trying to be magical, but it's not magical enough. It tries to be twisty and shocking, but it ends up like twisting in ways that are either predictable or in ways that you're like, what? I think it's trying too hard, and it didn't need to, but it is really good, and I'm excited for the second book. The next book I read this month was Traitor's Blade by Sebastian de Castell. This was an audiobook that I listened to, and the narrator was fantastic. I love that he was able to sing, and he sang the parts that were sung in the book. If you don't know anything about this book, it's about a kingdom that has fallen, and now we have this group of 3 greatcoats, and the greatcoats were the king's men. What they used to do was go around the different lands and listen to people's problems, and they would judge. They would be like the judge. They would figure out who did what wrong and gave judgment. They would usually sing this judgment because it was for, more of the common folk, and it's something that they could keep in their heads. But now what happened was that the king was killed, and we have dukes who rule all their lands, but nobody seems to agree, and so we have just different dukedoms and different rules, and everyone calls the greatcoats the traitors, the Traitori. And so you start the book with these 3, let me just make sure I have their names, Falchio, Kest, and Brasti, and they are actually in the very beginning acting as bodyguards, and the person that they're guarding gets and they are blamed for it, and you kind of get thrown into this adventure of them trying to figure out what to do, running away. There's a lot that happens in this book. There's a purge-like scenario, there's save a young girl scenario, there is escaping prison scenario. So much happens in this book, and a lot of it is really fun, and some of it is very cringy. And so even though I've watched a couple of YouTubers review this book, and I can understand where they're coming from because some of it is just... I just really enjoyed the three of them. Like, I enjoyed their camaraderie. There are some parts where Falkio is by himself and he's like doing all these things, and there's something about him that he's flawed, but he's very interesting as a character to me. And so I really enjoyed it. I do want to read the next couple of books, but my library doesn't have the audiobooks on hand, so we might just have to slowly read them. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I know that there isn't great female representation in this book, and so I'm hoping that the next books will get better. But I will say, like, sometimes I read a lot of books where the females are the main characters and there's not a lot with like the male characters, so it was a nice change of pace for me to follow a group of mostly guys, and I also really enjoy the little girl and Rosti, who's the bowman. So they kind of form a mentor-mentee relationship that I find to be very cute. So that's that one. Next is, let's grab it. The next book I read was also an audiobook, but I borrowed the physical copy because I'm going to reread it. This is a very fast-paced book. The audiobook is only 5 hours long. It's Ring Shot by P. Jelly Clark. The cover is so awesome. This cover is designed by Henry Sen Yi, and it's so good. I hope you guys can see it. It's such a good graphic cover. It is a novella, which is why it's so short. It's about, back in the day, what if the Ku Klux Klan were actual demons? That's pretty much what you need to know about this book. It is, I said I read 2 horror type books. This was my second horror type book. It took me a while to get my guts up to read this book because I didn't want to be scared. So much just happens and I couldn't get it all. Like, I want to reread it with the audiobook, maybe do like an immersion reading and really try to get all the symbolism in this book. But as a person who came in knowing only a couple things about this book, I thought it was really, really well written, really well narrated, really good. I just want to experience it a little bit like better, just as like a smarter reader, maybe just like really take the time to investigate everything that's happening in the book. The next book I finished this month was Tress and the Emerald Sea, and it is so good. I love this book. This book is definitely one of my favorite books this year. It's so good. Okay, so we follow 18-year-old Tress as she tries to save Charlie, the Duke's son, and also the boy that she loves. She lives on an island, so she has to be a stowaway. So she stows away onto the ship, and then adventures ensue, friendships form. There's something about this world that's so weird compared to ours, is that there's spores everywhere, and different colored spores do different things, and they're also quite dangerous. And so we watch her maneuver all these new things. She comes from an island that's very separate from the rest of the world, and so she's like adapting and learning and so just witty and smart and trying to figure this stuff out. I love the characters, I love the world, I love the narrator, I love how the story was told. I just love all of it. I like the humor a lot too. Some of it could have been a little hokey, but it actually ended up working really well. And I love Tress. Like I'm not sure why Tress to me was a better main character than a lot of the other females I read this month, but something about Tress and the way she approaches problems and the way she is described and her grit and just the way she presents herself is just amazing. I love Tress. I want to be her when I grow up. Like, I just love her attitude, and I find her to be so enjoyable to follow. I think this book is nearly perfect. I don't have any real criticisms. Maybe if I listened to some other people I could see, but I love this book. This book is amazing to me. And then the last book I read was Hellbent by Leah Bardugo. This is book 2 of the Alex Stern series. It's an urban fantasy dark academia based in Yale. We follow Alex, who is a badass, and she doesn't belong in Yale, but they as in the people that are in charge of this society called the Lethe Society, Lethe House, find her and bring her, kind of cons their way into letting her into Yale, and she has this special power where she can see greys who are the dead, and so she kind of helps facilitate, and all the Lethe House is the house that kind of tries to keep people in line in all these other houses of the occult. And let's see, in book 1 it's kind of a murder mystery, and we also try to find out more about Alex and the world and Darlington in book 1, and Darlington is her mentor. In book 1 you find out that he's gone missing, and book 2 is when you really try to go find him, and we're trying to rescue him. This book was fine. I liked it a bit. It's hard to explain. I liked it enough where I want to continue it, and I would listen to it at work, but I don't like it enough to reread it or really gush about it. I think Alex is a strong character, and I know she's got to do what she's got to do, but I think it's hard because I just don't feel for any of the characters enough, and I also don't enjoy the magic a lot. Okay, so that was all of the stuff I read and listened to audiobook wise. Now we're going to talk about everything I watched this month, which was a lot. So I'm going to try to rapid fire this because I know I talk way too much. First, we watched Rurouni Kenshin Reanimated. We are about 18 episodes in. My husband really loves the first original version, so we wanted to watch this one and see how it compares. So far, we mostly like the original better. However, I think there's parts of this new one that I really like. I really like that they show Kaoru fighting and training with other people, and I also enjoy some of the animation. I think is enjoyable, but some of it is kind of silly. But yeah, so if you don't know anything about Rurouni Kenshin, it's about a wanderer who used to be an assassin back in the revolution days. Now that it's post-revolution, the Meiji government has won. He walks around with a reverse blade sword and just tries to help the common people. He ends up helping Kaoru, who is the daughter of the Kamiya Kashin style, and her dad, I think, passed away or something, and they end up kind of like forming like a friendship, and he stays at the dojo with her, and some other people come, and there's like a whole found family vibe. So I'm interested to see how far they go, if they're going to do another season, but I do think I like the original more. I don't know if it's just for like nostalgic sake or what, but that's how I feel about it so far. I tried to watch The Mummy several times, but I kept falling asleep because I read the book What the River Knows, and it made me have like wants to rewatch The Mummy. It's very cozy for me, so I easily fall asleep. Not because it's bad, but because I've watched it so many times. If you have never seen this cult classic, I definitely recommend it. It's, let's see, one sentence. It's about a librarian who goes on an archaeological adventure to the city of the dead with her brother and a handsome stranger, and ends up awakening a mummy. It's very good, I promise. I don't think you would fall asleep. It's just me. What did I watch? On the plane, I watched 2 movies. One was Barbie. It was my first time watching it. I really enjoyed it. I love the sets and the clothing. I love the story. I love the mother-daughter relationship in the story. And I also really loved the conversation about feminism and patriarchy. Yeah, I thought that it was a really well done movie. I would recommend it. The story is, I don't know if I even should explain it, but it's about Barbie, and she like it's like there's a Barbie world and then real world, and Barbie travels to the real world because she's trying to get some answers. That's probably the easiest way to explain that. The next movie I watched on the plane was a rewatch. It's Suzume. Suzume is about a 17-year-old girl who meets a closer. A closer is a person who has a key to close these doors that emerge out of like abandoned areas in Japan. If he doesn't go and close these doors, a worm will come out and cause earthquakes. She is very curious, so she goes, and she ends up pulling out a keystone, which is kind of like a guardian of these doors. And as they are trying to capture the keystone to bring it back, the keystone then curses the closer, Sota, into a chair. It's like the best character in the movie. And he gets cursed into as a chair, and so she has to go help because, you know, he's not as capable as a chair to close all these doors that now are just opening and the worms are coming out because the keystone is loose and running around. This book is really about finding a purpose. It's about growing up. It's about how those relationships change as you grow up, and I think it's also about just like a person's need to like find answers. It explores the themes of grief and memories, loss. This movie is beautifully animated, like absolutely gorgeous. I really recommend it, especially for people who enjoy anime but think like it's just too long to watch an entire series. This movie is so good. It's got just absolutely beautiful imagery, and the doors are actually a portal to the ever after, I think it's called, and that place is also beautiful and has a symbolic part to it as well. Yeah, absolutely gorgeous. It's by the same people that made Your Name and Weathering with You. I've never watched Weathering with You, but Your Name is also one of my favorites. So we are still watching the Apothecary Diaries. Still loving it. It's about a young apothecary who is from the Pleasure District, and she gets nabbed and brought to the palace to be a worker, and she also solves mysteries there. I think that's like the simplest way to talk about it. I still love it. I love Mao Mao. It has gotten very intense in like her story, and I just got to one of the episodes that's really sad. You kind of find out more about like her biological parents. So yeah, it's really well done. The animation is very gorgeous. It's beautiful, but it's also like animated really well as well. We finished Marry My Husband, which is a K-drama about a woman who gets reborn 10 years in the past, and she basically tries to get revenge on her husband and best friend because they were sleeping together and he also kills her. So yeah, let's see. What I thought about it was that it's very dramatic. So dramatic. I don't think any of the characters are fully great. I mean, everyone is gray, but it's also like, it's one thing to be a gray character because that's human, but it's another thing to be a gray character with like orange and red flags. Like, although I'm about their relationship, the couple that gets together, I'm like, you're kind of stalkery though. I don't know. So yeah, I don't think it's one that I would ever rewatch, but it was a good watch when we watched it. I just don't know if I ever want to watch it again. I would recommend it to people who like soap operas and like those kind of like super dramatic shows, because I would say this takes the cake. I didn't write this down, I forgot. We also finished Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2. What a tonal change. Season 2, we have like the very beginning talks about Gojo's past, and it's kind of fun. And then it goes to present day, and like a lot of people die, and it's just sad. Like, I don't know. And then there's also, some people think that the animation was great, but I don't know how I feel about it. Like, the last 4 or 5 episodes, they started doing like a different style, and it felt really like sketchy, but in a way that felt like a draft, not in a way that felt cool. Like, I've been like, I love watching the Spider-Verse movies because of all the different illustration styles. It didn't feel like that. It just felt like, honestly felt like the animation studio was running out of time, and that's just what they were going to use, because yeah. So for Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2, I would say I'm pumped for Season 3 because I really want to know what happens, but I'm also very scared. Like, I thought this was going to be like a happier show. I was very wrong. It is very much a show where anybody can die. So there's that. Alrighty. Thank you for bearing with me and flying through those. I always have to fly through the shows because I feel like I talk way too much about the books. Please let me know in the comments if you've read any of these, watched any of these. Happy snacking, happy reading, happy watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!